on my smart clock. Okay, so let's get started. As we progress, some people might just pour in. So we have one of the senior colleague of mine from IMT Nagpur, Dr. Salina Khan, a counselor by training. She works in the area of positive psychology, has been managing the philanthropic activities of IMT Nagpur. She has been very active on the social front. Okay, let me briefly read out her very brief profile. She has been very humble to send a very brief profile. Okay, she was born and brought up in the princely state of Rajasthan. Dr. Salina Khan is an associate professor at the Institute of Management Technology in Nagpur for the past decade. She is a psychologist by education and training with her PhD in counseling psychology. She teaches core courses like organizational behavior and group dynamics, along with a few elective courses in human resource management. She is also the chairperson, brand promotions, and on-campus students counselor at IMT Nagpur. Let me tell you, she is also currently the area chair OBHR. Okay, she has published a few research papers in reputed national and international journals. Her current research activities are focused on positive psychology, positive organizational behavior, emotional intelligence, and psychological well-being. Okay, and she's open to feedback and staying in touch with you. You can connect with her at skhan@imtnog.ac.in. Okay, so that is a very little, very briefly about Dr. Salina. Dr. Salina, are you there?
Yes, Professor Mohanty, thank you so much.
Okay, so now over to you. The floor is all yours. Okay,
thank you,
and
sir.
thanks for honoring our invitation and being here with our participants. Okay, great. Okay, so over to Dr. Salina. Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How is everyone doing?
Good, madam. Good afternoon to you.
Great.
All well, ma'am.
So glad to hear that. Okay, I hope you've had a good lunch at your respective places. And I hope we are all set for the post-lunch session.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So today I'll be talking about the use of assessment instruments, specifically when we are talking about management teaching. See, when Professor Mohanty briefly introduced me, and as you all know that I am a psychologist by profession. So in fact, I end up using these assessment tools more often because most of us know that our OBHR data collection that we do specifically with the purpose of research also, we end up collecting the data through primary data collection. Yes, Mr. Mangesh, what can I do for you? Your hand is raised. Any specific query you have right now? Okay, I guess it might have been by mistake. Okay, I see your hand raised again. If there is a query, okay, guys, let's just have some basic guidelines. In case you have any queries, anything related to the presentation that I'm making, you're most welcome to raise your hand and ask me there and then as we are proceeding with our discussion in the session. Otherwise, you can always ask me at the end of the session. You can suit yourself whatever is comfortable to you. All right. Okay, so when I am talking about the use of assessments, see, I want to begin our session with first and foremost, as management faculty or otherwise also as teachers, all of us know we have the most important task of assessing our students at the end of whatever course we have taught them. So when we are talking about assessment, it's not only a great responsibility that's entrusted on us, but without that also, the student can't go through to the next level of their academics. So we all know the importance of assessment. We all know the importance of assessment tools also. So I'll be talking about each one of them briefly. For you, some of you, it might be something that you have already heard, something that you are all using also. But I'll just talk about something, a few of these Okay. Is anybody not able to hear me? Because I guess Mr. Vanegaonkar is saying no video, only audio. Whereas my video is on. Is everybody able to see me?
Yes, madam. It is.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then Mr. Vanegaonkar, I guess there might be some issue at your end because I have already put on my video. Yeah, thank you so much. All right. So for some of you, it might be a repetition because it is something that you are already using, but I'll start with the basics and I'll focus on the current tools also that we are talking about as far as assessment tools are concerned. That's majorly used in while we are teaching management. Along with that, I'll be closing my session with some of the tools which are also used for assessing or guiding the students for their career advancements. So I'll be talking about those tools also because these are the tools which quite a lot of organizations also use when they're inducting these students as interns or when they are inducting them or when they are hiring them for their jobs. So there are some of these tools, there are some of these questionnaires that I'll be using and I'll be showing a few samples to you. And in case you're interested, you can undergo one of them yourself also, although it's a very brief version. I've kept it specifically with the perspective of the span of time that we have of our interaction here. So I haven't kept a very long questionnaire for your own benefit. Okay. So let me just have an understanding of what exactly do you understand by assessments when we are talking about assessment tools. As faculty members, what are the various assessment tools that you have experienced? And do you think there are any prerequisites before we decide our assessment tools? What are we going to use while we are teaching? Any idea, any clue? I would request you guys to please raise your hands while you're answering. Yes, Anuradha ma'am, please express yourself.
Ma'am, when we use assessment tools, basically we have to be very sure of the outcomes of the delivery or the content that we have. And based on our outcomes, we will have to then design our assessment tools so that we are sure that whatever we have taught has reached the students, and then we get a feedback. And then we have to also decide whether we want the assessment to be a formative assessment or a summative assessment. So based on whether it's a summative or a formative, then we can use different tools for our assessments and then again map them with our outcomes that we have already decided. So that is what I think is essential before we decide on our assessment tool.
Fair enough. So let me just rephrase my question. When you're saying we need to decide on our outcomes, can you give me a very specific example about the same? When you're saying we need to decide our outcomes, can you give me an example supporting the same so as to how do you use it?
Yes. I teach strategic management. So when I'm teaching strategic management, if one of my outcomes is students should be able to design and create a strategy. If that is going to be my outcome, I'll have to make sure that whatever internal assessment or external assessment is being done, questions are framed in such a way that I can assess whether the ability has been developed or students not really know how to formulate a strategy. So that is what I mean by an outcome. So if your outcome is very well decided, basically I'm talking about a course outcome. So if your course outcome is well decided, well defined, then you exactly know how your assessment tool has to be designed so that it is not a very blank sort of assessment that is done. I mean, to put it in very simple words, like when you look at the normal question papers, you have all questions which are at the lower level of Bloom's taxonomy: what, why, when, describe, discuss. But that doesn't really test their analytical or design thinking or creation abilities of the students. So that is why I said our outcomes have to be very clear. And once our outcomes are clear, then accordingly we can design assessment strategies for both internal assessment as well as external assessment. And then we'll have to decide which part of the outcome can be tested through an external assessment, that is the end semester exam as we call it, and which of the outcomes needs to be tested through the internal assessments. That is what I
Okay.
meant, ma'am.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, I would actually just rephrase it a little. When you're talking about outcomes, I would actually just try to elaborate the same and say when we're talking about course outcomes, if I'm understanding you
Yes,
correctly.
yes, right,
Right.
ma'am.
Now here, along with the course outcomes, I feel we also need to be sure so as to what exactly is the objective or purpose for the same.
Right, ma'am.
When
Right,
I
ma'am.
am wanting them, outcome is the end result.
Yes.
First and foremost, when I am even dividing my assessment tools or instruments that I'm planning to use, or how exactly am I going to assess my students, I need to be first and foremost be sure what is the objective of me delivering that particular course itself first and foremost. So
True.
first, my course objectives should be clear, and my outcomes or even the instruments or the assessment tools that I'm using, it should be in sync to check whether those objectives are being met or not. Only then I'll be able to come to know whether my outcomes are in sync with the objectives as well.
Yeah,
Am
I
correct,
didn't.
Radha ma'am?
Yeah, you're right, because I didn't mention about the objectives because, I sort of assumed that objectives and outcomes will be in sync with each other. See, when we are using this outcome based education as a strategy, and that is what is used in a lot of institutes today, so I sort of assumed that objectives are also going to be in sync with outcomes. What you're saying, ma'am, is perfectly right.
Right. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you, ma'am.
so yeah. So when anybody else wants to express any of their perspective beyond what we have already discussed?
Yeah, madam. Good afternoon, madam. This is Subrat Chaudhary. Actually,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chaudhary.
Normally we do the assessment, and normally what I do, actually two aspects are taken into consideration. One is that what is taught to the students, how much knowledge they carried. So knowledge assessment, one aspect. And another assessment, so normally I give them a hypothetical situation or a practical situation to do the solution of that, or to frame or to design, or suppose say that pick up the example like if I'm teaching them branding, so how much they have picked up the theory part. That is one knowledge assessment. And the practical assessment we do, we give some hypothetical product and we ask them to design the pricing strategy or branding strategy for that. So that is what is that application assessment. It's
Fair
a
enough.
applied things that normally we do it.
Fair enough. All right. Any other perspective? Anybody wants to share? Okay. So moving ahead, when we, as you all said, when both Radha ma'am and Mr. Chaudhary, both of you said that we want to test the students whether they can design. She talked about strategic management, whether they can design a strategy. You said whether they can do something regarding branding. In fact, don't you feel first and foremost, as teachers, we ourselves are the designers who have to design different instruments and tools time and time again and keep ourselves updating also according to what is required?
Very much, very true, madam.
Yes, ma'am. We have to do that continuously.
Yes. So as teachers, the most important skill that I feel specifically in choosing or designing the right instrument, assessment instrument, so we as faculty members end up being designers also. Because as new technology is coming up, as all of you are also aware, we are talking on an online mode. All of us, specifically at least at IMT Nagpur, when we are taking their exams, when we are teaching them online also, are designing our instruments, assessment instruments in assessing their learning, whether the student is actually learning what I want them to learn is actually being met or not. So my tools have to be changed. I have to design some other way of assessing whether the what I am teaching them, they are actually able to grasp the same also or not. So when we are talking about teachers in the roles of designers, we end up designing and remodeling or restructuring our assessment tools as well. So I'll be taking you through a few slides briefly. But before that, is there any term when we are talking about assessments, other than schools and colleges, any other examples that you can give me where we can actually say that we are in a mode of being assessed throughout our life in different phases. Any other examples you can give me?
Appraisals which take place in organizations.
Yes, I think all of us go through the same from the time we enter school, even after passing out our schools, after passing out our colleges also, we are constantly being assessed in the form of appraisals, performance appraisals, on the job appraisals, and it's a never ending journey. So when we are talking about assessments, appraisals, performance, that itself is actually we are being assessed on what we are performing on the job. Dr. Sharma, do you want to say something?
उस पे Google Classroom पे.
So are you talking to us in the class? Dr. Sharma, are you talking to us? Dr. Ambud Sharma. I see his mic on, so I'm not sure whether he's
I'm
talking
sorry,
to us.
madam. Sorry, madam. There's somebody else. Sorry, apologize for that.
It's okay, Dr. Sharma, no issues. So when Anuradha ma'am said that yes, our appraisals, even our job appraisals are a part of our when we are being assessed. So we are assessed on different parameters also when we are being appraised on our job. Same thing happens in organizations also when our students go and join their jobs, when they become employees, there also their assessments continue happening. In fact, more and more organizations are actually opening assessment centers at their own organizations, which actually has different combination of tools, assessment tools, which actually assesses the skills that the employees are able to perform on the job. And simultaneously, they are also through these assessment center tools itself, the combination of on the shelf as well as in basket exercises that they have, the management of that particular organization is actually able to assess what kind of gaps exist in the skill sets of these employees through these assessment tools, and they put these employees through training so that they can upgrade their skill sets to improve their participation or improve their performance on the job. Okay, moving on, I'll be starting on with the basic definition, as Anuradha ma'am has already said what exactly is assessment. It's basically all about appraisal. When I'm talking about assessment, it is all about appraisal. Are we able to see these slides? If you could just confirm the same.
Yes, yes, madam.
Yes,
Yes,
madam.
ma'am. Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. Thank you so much. So proceeding further, I'll start with the definition by Merriam-Webster, where, as we all know, assessment is nothing but I'm using the most simplest thing, making a judgment about something. In fact, it's not only about the performance or the work that we are assessing. We actually end up assessing people also. We end up passing judgments about them. He or she is like this. He or she has these skill sets. He or she has these traits. He or she has these abilities. So assessment is everything where we are passing a judgment. Even for that matter, when we go to visit a place, we end up assessing that place also. So that's the simplest definition of assessment that we have here. And assessment tools and strategies, they actually allow us as facilitators, as management teachers or evaluators to assess the development and growth of their student, employees in the organizations, or for that matter, even at school level. I see a hand raised. I don't know. Okay, I guess somebody is wanting to enter in. Just give me a second, guys. Okay. Okay. And when we are talking about assessment tools, these are basically used for calculation of each process. And that is something that I'm going to discuss with you in detail at a later stage in the presentation also. And when we talk about assessment tools, these are formal methods and tools which include standardized tests, standardized questionnaires, And even for that matter, doctors, they end up doing these age-related developmental milestones. When it is born, since his infancy to his toddlerhood or even to his adolescence and adulthood, there are different milestones that a doctor assesses them on. So these are also considered as assessment tools when they are touching the developmental milestones. And informal approaches and techniques include the use of flashcards and anecdotal records. Can anybody just tell me what do you understand by anecdotal records and flashcards? If we have a basic understanding, that will be easier for me to move ahead.
Madam, I am not sure, a little idea about this flashcard.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr. Chaudhary, you can give it a try if you want.
Flashcard, that I can say it is a certain kind of a thing, so that some information is contained in that, and we compare with the outcome.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Any other definition or any other explanation of the same?
Ma'am, flashcards, yeah, flashcards are basically cards. On one side you have the question, on the other side you have the answer, and usually you show the flashcard to the students and you expect them to give an answer. Okay. And you already have the answer on the other side, so you can always show it to them. So, it's a very quick assessment, or when we want to take a quick feedback in a class, if we have flashcards with us, that helps. And yes. Anecdotal, what was the word? I cannot see it. I don't know, something wrong with my
anecdotal records.
Anecdotal records are, records which we have kept. They might not be very scientifically kept, but, we have a lot of information which we've collected over a period of time. So that is usually known as anecdotal records that we have.
Basically, anecdotal records, flashcard, what you said, Radha ma'am, is bang on target. That's why it's used as an informal tool. It's basically yes. Where we use it as a shortcut. Okay, I ask a question and I quickly show the answer to the student, yes. And that basically lightens up. That not only creates an energy level, or the participation ends up increasing. Many a times, I use flashcards in the class as games. When I divide my class into teams and I ask them, okay, fine, who's going to give this answer? And then they have prizes also for the same. So this is basically, not only it induces fun in the class, but actually energizes the students to participate more. That's what my personal experience has been so far. As far as anecdotal records, it's basically when we talk about recording the anecdotes or any specific incidents of the students in their school time or in the college time, and we preferably maintain a record for the same. It's a written document, which the purpose is to maintain it in a systematic manner. But many a times it happens, why we say that, as you said, that it is not very systematic, because most of the time it is written by the memory of the person who's recording it. It's not on the spot kind of a thing immediately that is happening. It's how much the person is able to recall. He records that anecdote in the record book of that particular student for positive or otherwise reasons, or the penalty or positive feedback or any reward that the person or the has to give to the child, or the management wants to give to the child. So these are considered as informal records as well. Moving on, are you able to see the slides, guys? Is it visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
All right. So purpose, there are basically two broad objectives. As we started our conversation also with the objective also of assessment tools, here there are two broad objectives of the assessment tools. First is to gather information that will guide the classroom teaching. As we said, we are picking up the objective. What is it that I want to cover in this particular course? And when I'm talking about how much knowledge or how much learning I want to impart, I want it to be assessed for these specific outcomes so that it can be measured. That's why the objectives and the outcomes are very closely associated. So the first is to gather information that will guide my classroom teaching, and second is to track the students' progress towards achieving year-end learning outcomes. And that's something that, as I said, we have been facing since we were kids. after every year, or in fact, I would say throughout the academic year, we keep assessing the knowledge of the students through different parameters. Sometimes it is half yearly exams in school, sometimes it is a quarterly exam in school, sometimes it's as simple as a class test, where the purpose is to actually assess how much is the child or the student able to retain. And when we talk about in management, we are actually wanting to assess whether they are actually learning it in the same sync. Specifically, when we talk about management, the one line thing that I just say that what we try to teach our management student is to be effective decision makers. Can they take effective decisions right now through participation in their case study analysis, through taking decisions in various simulations, role plays, or any games that we are putting them through? So ultimately, when we are putting them to the purposes, am I able to meet my objective? Am I able to deliver? When I am talking about my assessment tools, have I actually devised my tools in such a way that it is helping my students learn what I want them to learn? Are they becoming effective managers? Are they becoming effective decision makers? That's the ultimate purpose that my assessment tool should be able to measure. Similarly, when we are talking about assessment tools as facilitators, I need to ensure that my students are able to self-monitor their own skills and techniques. They should be able to monitor their own learning graph. Am I able to learn certain things? And not only, as Mr. Chaudhary said, it's not only the theory. Am I able to apply my learnings as well? So whether it is through different projects, whether it is through different case studies, whether it is through different live projects, also they are given many a time. And even in fact, when we are talking about real life issues, we end up giving them real life issues. Okay, fine, on the spot. When we say the situational tests also, okay, this is what has happened, you tell us what is to be done. When we are making them go through role plays, when we are asking them to do certain simulations in the class, that's basically what the purpose is. Can they take a decision? And it's not only as an individual, we end up putting them through different teams also and assessing them whether they can work as a team very well. How are they able to perform with their group members? Are they able to get the work done from them also effectively as a manager? So these assessment tools are helpful there. In fact, as you all know, even as simple as when we are talking about students pursuing further studies, their SAT exams, their IELTS exam, when you are assessed on English, IELTS, TOEFL, even their GMAT or GRE exams are also nothing but the assessment tools to actually assess the skills or the knowledge that a student has acquired, and is it good enough for them to take them to the next level. So as teachers or as facilitators, it's our responsibility to ensure that the students are active in setting their learning objectives and designing their own action plans. As both Mr. Chaudhary and Radha ma'am said, that they have to design things for themselves. They have to deliver things for themselves, and they are able to use the assessment tools effectively. Any questions so far, guys, before I proceed for the formal and the informal methods in detail? Any questions, any queries so far? Because I've just started with the basics as yet. Fair enough. Okay, so when we are talking about assessment tools, there are different kinds of assessment tools, formal and informal. So informal methods, we'll be talking about as simple as something called tests. That we all know, we end up taking tests for our students, whether it is a midterm, whether it is an end term, whether it is an online thing, or whether it is a pen and paper thing. As we all know, testing can be both formal and informal, but most of the time it is a standardized assessment, which even the state evaluation programs assessment, whether we are talking about clearing for the net examination, or even when we are talking about examinations cleared for the students for CA, or even for the medical entrance, the NEET examinations, all these are nothing but standardized assessment tools to actually ensure whether the student has the basic knowledge to get an entry to the higher education that they have to pursue. Standardized tests basically have various question types to assess their analytical thinking and problem solving skills. See, ultimately, any tool, any assessment tool that we use, the purpose is to actually assess whether the individual is able to analyze a situation given at particular level at that particular standard. Whether it is at school level, there also it's basically more of their knowledge that is being tested. But when we are talking more and more on the management perspective, that's what we are wanting to focus here. The purpose is, can they resolve issues through rational decision making? Are they logical enough? So when we're talking about assessment tools, most of them are devised in such a way, whether we are putting them in a particular simulation or a situation, ultimately it assesses whether the student or the participant can actually resolve their problems through analytical thinking. And informal techniques is something that we talk about by using flashcards, pop quizzes, or even for that matter, when we are having these verbal question and answer series, or when we say that we are having we ask them questions, or we have these viva voces for the students. Even for that matter, when these students have their SIP presentation, the summer internship projects, there again, it's not only about their learning or the decisions that they have taken during their analytical thinking or the problem solving. We also, when we are asking them through their presentations, we are asking them questions. We actually want to assess how well are they able to do it through the viva voce, when we are asking what exactly have they done, whether they were able to analyze the situation effectively or not. Other than that, another important formal method that we end up assessing our students through is observation. As you all know, the importance of non-verbal communication as well. So the second and the most important thing I want to focus, other than these are the instruments and techniques that all of us use, but I would want to focus on each of them one by one. Observation. This is one tool where we actually, when we are putting them students through games, through various activities, we actually assess the student's social and behavioral process. We want to observe how are they behaving with their batchmates, how are they behaving with their teammates, are they a team player or are they a social loafer, are they able to interact well with their team members, or are they somebody who is actually increasing the nuisance value of the group. So we actually, through observation, we are actually analyzing the students' capabilities, even for that matter, their communication skills, their interpersonal skills. This is something which is it's most beautifully observed when the person is doing it in front of you. So obviously, observation, face-to-face observation, sometimes it is more scientific when we are actually being a participant ourselves. When we are participating along with them, we actually end up saying, okay, fine. When he is actually behaving in this group, how is he or she behaving with us? The member included, the observer including the group. But then sometimes it is a third party observer also when you are outside the group and you are just giving a neutral perspective about the group functioning that is going on. So observation again becomes a very important tool to assess the behavior of the employees or the students. I would just request, somebody's mic is on. If you could just check and put it off, please. Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on. After observation, we have something called self-reporting. Now, when we are talking about self-reporting, this is something where the students and the employees in organizations, they are asked about their own experience. It's something like when we are appraised. So it's a self appraisal. How much have we done when we are working, or when we are submitting our work reports? We actually first and foremost do a self analysis. We do a self appraisal. This is something similar to self reporting. Ask the students, how much do you believe they have performed well, or what are the challenges that they perform? Many a times it happens, students end up submitting their reports late. Sometimes it happens that they have, specifically nowadays with the technical glitches when the online classes are happening, otherwise also offline also, sometimes when they are saying that I was not able to perform well because of XYZ reasons. So self reporting is when they are assessing themselves, how did they do. In fact, officially we also term it as their learning journals. They submit, they do their journaling, they actually write about their entire journey of the course that we have put them through, or maybe when we are talking about the course, many a times we actually incorporate this as an objective also, when the outcome is the student himself or herself able to acknowledge the various learning parameters. Many a times it is verbally or it is written exactly what is it that we are expecting the course outcomes to be there. Sometimes these outcomes, there are some of the outcomes which are not clearly written there, and this is what we are actually able to gauge through a student's learning journal. When they are doing their self reporting, how are they performing, how much were they able to learn, how much they were able to grasp, and where exactly are they able to use it, or they feel they'll be able to use it in their life in future. How many of you are familiar with the applied behavioral sciences programs or the labs that run there? Any one of you familiar with the applied behavioral programs, guys? Nobody? Are we there? Are my participants there?
Yes, ma'am, we are very much there.
I just need to be sure because it's a post-lunch session. So I need to be very sure whether you are live and kicking everybody. So that's why
Ma'am,
I'll
we
just
have a program or a course on leadership lab. So would
okay.
that be a behavioral lab? I'm not very sure.
Another one, it entirely depends on what exactly or how exactly do you run that course.
Basically, it's a 2 credit course, optional course which the students take up. And we have the syllabus which is centered around developing leadership skills through uh, various activities that they do. There is no direct teaching over there in that particular lab. We don't have lectures as we usually have in the class. But we make the students learn about leadership skills and rather develop their leadership skills through a series of activities and
Okay. Which
management
is this
games.
organization that you're talking about, Radha ma'am?
I work in cyber, that is Chhatrapati Shahu Institute of Business Education and Research. It's an autonomous college, autonomous for the last 40 years. And our flagship course, of course, is MBA. But apart from that, we have different other PG courses that we run over here. We've got 7 different programs like MSW, MCA, and ME Quantitative Economics, MSc Computers, MSc Environmental Science. We also have an MBA in Environmental Management, and of course our MBA program. We have an MCOM. So this is a very old organization in Western Maharashtra. It's in
So ma'am,
Kolhapur.
how, for this specific course that you're talking about, how do you assess the outcomes, the learning outcomes for the student?
Basically, over there we have we use this method of self-reporting and maintaining a portfolio. So, based on the on the journal that the students have prepared, plus they will be subjected to a viva, which will be conducted at the end of the semester. And based on that, we assess them. There is no written theory examination.
All right, fair enough. Makes sense. So when we are, I don't know who this person is. They have, somebody else has raised their hand. I can't see whose hand is raised. So anybody else who wants to express any of their opinion on this perspective, please feel free to do so. I can't see the hands raised here. So in case anyone wants to participate, you are most welcome to do it. So moving forward, when we are talking about self-reporting, as you said, Radha, yes, that's basically one of the ways in doing it. Even when I'm talking about these applied behavioral sciences, there is an organization that I'm sure some of you might have heard of, the Applied Behavioral Science, ISABS. So they basically run these labs. These are known as behavioral labs. They are basically done on the basis of T training, T group training. When they are doing this, it's all about the participants self-reporting. When they are writing these journalings, when they are doing their learning logs, or they are writing these journals, which actually helps their facilitators understand what is the progress that they have made. So they have these different levels of labs, and then they have these professional development processes that the participants are put through if they want to get into the journey of becoming a facilitator themselves. So these behavioral scientists basically run this particular course. There are a lot of faculty members from elite B schools who are a part of it, who are facilitators attached to this. So these are basically the entire T group training itself is based on self-reporting or writing learning logs. So that actually helps the facilitator understand the learning of the student much better. And many a times it goes beyond achieving the target or achieving the objective that the course is designed for. And it basically gives insights to the facilitators. How can they modify, or as I said, restructure their course outline so that the students can learn better? Moving forward, I don't think I need to focus and tell you what do you mean by grades. As all of us know, what exactly we are actually in the business where we have to mandatorily grade the students. When we are talking about grading, it can be anything from A star to F in the category A star, A, etc., etc. Depending on the marks that the student gets, we actually have these slabs or these grades that we put these students into. So when we are talking about grading, that again is an instrument and a tool. The same thing is done in the corporate world externally also. So most of our management teaching, whenever we are talking about putting into grades or when we are talking about observation, self-reporting, most of these instruments and techniques are something we actually, the purpose is that we should prepare our students, our future managers, to get into sync with the instruments and techniques that they might end up experiencing even in the future at their jobs. So that's basically how we devise it in a management institution also, so that there is a sync, that the students are able to experience some of them here. And obviously, when you are applying it on the jobs, it is much more intensive there. Then we have talked about anecdotal records. When we are talking about anecdotal records, as we are keeping a record of the students throughout, it's more or less in the corporate world, this is also known as critical incidents. When we talk about anecdotal records, we maintain these anecdotes. We maintain or we put a record, we maintain a record of the different incidents or the anecdotes about how a student has behaved in a particular situation. Or these anecdotes can also be of exceptional behaviors that the student has showed. Exceptional behavior, exceptional skill sets. So when we are maintaining these records, this is something that actually helps the student. It's an informal thing and which actually helps us maintain a record about the student in the long run as well. Then same thing, that is what the organization ends up doing for the employees when they are citing as critical incidents
Ma'am,
on the job.
excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, you have said that anecdotal records is also known as critical records in corporate life. And
This is
as far
something.
as Yeah, yeah, yes,
Please
ma'am.
continue.
Yeah, as far as anecdotal records are concerned, do we need to understand the set pattern of preparing the anecdotal records for each and every students? Because it is really little bit difficult for us to prepare the anecdotal records for each and every students. So what kind of particular pattern that we need to that we need to follow before preparing the anecdotal records?
Ma'am, most of the time, the anecdotal records are actually on the basis of the skills that you want to instill in a student during that particular course, or what we say, something that the organization or the school, here in case school or a management college, something that we believe is in sync with the societal norms. Like, for example, if I want to instill my students with discipline, I want them to be disciplined. So their anecdotal records would actually be maintaining a record how well disciplined or how ill disciplined were they. Something that they have done which is not in sync with the discipline rules and regulations of my institution, that will actually be marked in red as an anecdotal record for them.
So,
Similarly,
ma'am, we
any
need
other
to mention
skills.
the narration also. Ma'am, we need to mention the narration also.
Ma'am, briefly you have to, because when we are talking anecdotes means you have to briefly mention the narration itself. What exactly
Okay.
happened? And why do you think it is important?
Okay, okay.
Are you
So we need
understanding?
to work upon certain parameters, and based on
Yes,
that, we need to mention the narration, and it will need to be included into anecdotal records for each and every students.
exactly. Ma'am, the easiest or the simplest way, and in fact, I would say the most effective way, is to create a rubric for everything. When
Yes.
I'm talking about parameters, whether it is discipline, whether it is effective interpersonal skills, whether it is good leadership skills, also for that matter, if I'm able to create a rubric for it, ranging from excellent to really poor, what are the various behaviors that I actually expect from them to count it as excellent? If I am
Okay.
able to mark that, it will be very easy for me to maintain the anecdotal records as well, because
Okay.
this is something similar that the critical incidents in the corporate is done on the basis of bars, the behaviorally anchored rating scale.
Yeah, ma'am, can we take the example that when our kid is getting the report card in school, in which some points has exclusively mentioned about his or her leadership skills, behavior, attitude, punctuality,
Exactly, ma'am,
social
bang on target.
values. Yeah, yeah, I got it,
Exactly.
ma'am. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You're welcome, ma'am. So
Okay.
similarly, even when we are talking about on a report card, when a student is given some kind of a reward, some kind of a trophy with full attendance, when the person has not taken any leave, that in itself is an anecdote for the student, and at least at a young age, that I received this reward because I didn't miss any class or I didn't miss any school day. Similarly, examples of discipline, examples where the child has volunteered to do some social work. Nowadays, in schools, you have these multiple ways in which these school teachers or the school management is able to record these anecdotes and mention it in the report cards, which actually not only motivates a student to perform much more positively on the next level also in their school life. Okay. Any other question, Eric? Or can I move forward, please?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome. You're welcome. Okay. Moving on. As I said, anecdotal records can also be considered as critical incidents in the corporate world. Simultaneously, we have something called checklists. When we are talking about evaluating or assessing an individual, as I said, when we are talking about the critical incidents, or when we are talking about the behavioral rating scales also, going in sync with the same, there are certain checklists that are created to assess the parameters that an organization, or for that matter, as a teacher, as a facilitator, if I am teaching a particular course, I want my students to learn these things, and I can actually literally create a checklist depending on the kind of course that you're delivering. For example, if somebody is teaching as simple as Excel, so through that Excel, what are the various commands that you want your students to be proficient in? You can actually create a checklist for your course itself. And when you're assessing the performance of your students, you can actually check on that particular checklist so as to how exactly your student is faring. Or if there is a gap, then what exactly is the feedback or suggestions that you can actually give to your students, how he or she can improve their performance on the same. Then we have something called rating scale, which I'm sure most of you know. So I would request one of you to kindly provide me an example on how you guys use rating scales when you are assessing the performance of your students for any particular course or otherwise. Any example where you have used rating scales to assess students?
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Jyoti.
Yeah. So rating scales generally used at the time of Viva presentations, where we rate the school students from a, let's say, a scale of 1 to 10. So
Mhm.
10 is the highest and 1 is, I mean, 1 to 5. Like rating scale is generally we use at the time of Viva and oral presentations.
Okay. Anywhere else, anyone else has used rating scales other than Viva Voci?
Yeah, when we, madam, judging at the communication level of the students, we use this also.
Even at the time of their presentation, you end up doing that communication check.
Yes, yes.
You rate them their communication on how are they faring.
Yeah, body language, communications, and then we rate accordingly.
Fair enough. Anything else? Any other place where you have ever used rating scale?
Yes, madam. SIP presentation.
Okay. So what exactly,
The,
other than communication, is there anything
oh,
else that you use
yeah,
rating scale to assess?
content. It's the content. Their their research, how much they have researched, then
Okay.
their presentation and their communication, like how they are presenting, what is the way they are presenting, then what are the new things that they have, like how much they have comprehended the whole thing. That we give marks.
So, ma'am, if I'm understanding it correctly, you mainly use a Likert scale, either on a scale of 1 to 5 or on a 1 to 10.
Like a skill, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So,
Yes,
mainly it's communication or presentation. Yes, Jyoti, ma'am, anything else you want to
yeah,
add?
I remember, ma'am, I use this rating scale to assess my respondents during my PhD research.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how exactly do you do that? Whether they are responding to your questionnaires or not? Is that what you are talking about, or how exactly do you do it? Depending on the, or you're talking about the questionnaire that you have sent to them and you rate them on that.
No, the question was designed in such a way that they have to rate themselves. Like, for example, how they assess their product, how they assess their product. Okay, so you have to
Mhm.
rate them from 1 to 10, like that.
So that's basically they are doing the self ranking, isn't
Yeah,
it?
self
That's
ranking.
where they are
Yes,
providing you feedback.
yes.
Okay, fair enough. Any other purpose that you think you can use a rating scale for? See, technically, any questionnaire, any information that we are wanting to gather, or even for that matter, it's as simple as when we are assessing the performance of our employees as far as the administrative task is concerned, or even if I am talking about ranking method, ranking my students in a class also on their class performance. For example, when we are talking about now I'm talking about purely about ranking. I've moved ahead of rating scale. Rating scale, all you know, yes, it is a Likert scale. So I range from a 1 to 5. Even for that matter, when we are talking about ranking method, I end up ranking all my students when they are talking about writing their exams, end term, the marks that they are getting. So on the basis of all the components, all the evaluation components that I have designed for my students, if I am asked to choose the top 5 students of my class, I can actually, on the basis of how they have ranked in the class, on the various evaluation parameters also, I can actually choose the various parameters and I can range them, that this person has acquired or they are able to implement their knowledge in a most practical manner on the basis of their case analysis, on the basis of their class participation when the case discussions are happening. Similarly, conceptual clarity. Can I actually rate my students? So there again, I can rate them on a scale of 1 to 10 or on a 1 to 5. I can actually rate my students also. So when we are talking about rating scales, everything can be designed to assess students' performance on a rating scale. That's the utility and beauty of using these assessment tools. And the last is that I want to focus on is portfolios. Portfolios nowadays is greatly, it's not only the comprehensive evaluation that we actually evaluate a student on through the entire year, from the time that you started on the particular course till the end that they have performed in the end term. It will actually give you how has the student fared throughout the year. But technically, you can actually, even the grades that he or she has started from the beginning of his school till the end of his 10th and 12th, you can actually create an entire portfolio for the student also. Same thing is for his graduation, that is his undergrad, or even for his masters. In fact, portfolios nowadays, creating portfolios, see, it's not only the models or the people who are searching or who are in the artistic field, they create their portfolios. Like we hear about models having their portfolios, or the artists putting their paintings and creating a portfolio of the kind of work that they have done. In fact, nowadays, even as a faculty, as a teacher, we also need to have a portfolio for ourselves. That's in trend nowadays. So in this portfolio, you not only need to have the courses that you have taught, you need to have a research statement, you need to have a teaching statement that you're wanting to do simultaneously. For the past few years, at least 5 to 6 years, whatever various courses that you have taught, and the kind of feedback that you have got, you can actually incorporate that also in your portfolio. So anytime that you want to apply, this is for your own benefit. You can actually see how have you fared over the past years, the various courses that you have taught, the new courses that you have introduced, or even for that matter, the various skills, new skills that you have acquired over the past 5 to 6 years, that itself you can incorporate in the same. So the portfolios can be done for anybody. It's basically a brief summary of the career graph that as a facilitator or as a faculty you can create for yourself also. But when we are talking about the students in a management school, from the time the student enrolls in the first year till the time the student passes out, you can create an entire portfolio. How has he performed in the various courses? Where did he did excellently well? Simultaneously, it's not only about the courses, even the extracurricular activities, or even the committee work, social work, or the administrative work that he has participated in or involved in. All that can actually create a beautiful portfolio for the student, which can actually help him not only to present that portfolio for his future jobs, wherever he is wanting to appear for a job, he can actually present that entire portfolio. A student can himself or herself also create their own portfolio. So that's something which will tell the entire achievements that they have made through their undergrad or grad or any further studies that they are wanting to pursue or that they have pursued. Okay, any questions so far?
Ma'am, I have two questions.
Yes,
Ma'am,
Kavya, ma'am.
actually, just now you have said that if we are using a 10-point scale in SIP presentation or anything else, so we are simply using Likert 10-point scale, right? So is there any difference between rating scale and Likert point scale?
No, ma'am. Actually, Likert scale, another term. When we are talking about rating scale, another name for the same is Likert scale also. Technically, it can be whether you are using it on a 5-point or whether you are using it on a 10-point scale is absolutely your choice. Basically, is can I rate them on a scale on a particular scale? Rating scale means you have to create a scale. You have to create a range actually.
Okay, it depends upon different perspectives. When we are particularly using Likert 5-point scale or Likert 10-point scale or 7-point scale in the research field, so that means it can be considered as Likert point scale. Whereas when we are using rating scale in terms of academics, okay, in terms of assessing the students on the basis of certain evaluation parameters, so it can be considered as rating scale.
Ma'am, it's the same. It's actually the same.
It will be remaining same. Ma'am,
yes.
Another question related to the portfolio. Actually, you have said that from faculty's point of view, faculties can also create their portfolios in which they can exclusively mention about launching the new courses, institution building activities or course design and students feedback, etc. and etc. Whereas in terms of students, they can simply mention their skills that they actually excelled during the particular program. So, is there any?
Ma'am, just a second. Dr. Singh, Dr. Seema Singh, do you mind putting your mic on mute, please? Thank you. Yes, Dr. Pallavi, please proceed.
Is there any certain pattern or or format for preparing the portfolio?
There are a lot of formats available on the internet.
Okay.
You can take your pick. To be very honest, there is something that this is the standardized thing that is there. But when we are talking about a teaching portfolio, it basically incorporates every course that you have taught. I'm talking about purely as a facilitator, as a faculty, as a teacher. Every course that you have taught through your entire academic career.
Okay. So, will it be included with the CV also, with our CV or resume?
CV would be separate. Teaching portfolio is separate. Or otherwise, if you're talking about purely as a portfolio, CV would be only brief part of it, ma'am.
Yes. But we can highlight teaching portfolio whenever we are facing interview or we are having conversation with the top management of the institution.
Definitely, ma'am. That is always handy. Along with your resume, your teaching portfolio is going to be exclusively focusing. Now I'm talking about teaching portfolio. Exclusively on the courses that you have taught or the new courses that you have launched, or even for that matter, in case you have gone in for any visiting assignment to any other colleges, universities, or B schools, whatever student feedback that you have got, everything you can incorporate there. Along with the administrative responsibilities also that you have taken, that is again that you can incorporate there. But that has to be mentioned very briefly because that becomes a part of your portfolio, not teaching portfolio. There is a difference, ma'am, both of them.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, I have a question. Excuse me.
Yes, Seema, ma'am.
Ma'am, I just wanted to clear like this anecdotal records. Is this another name for incidental recording which we do in case of performance appraisals?
Ma'am, critical incidents. When you're talking
Yeah.
about incidental
Yeah.
thing, so that's something that is a part of anecdotal recall, because as the name says, critical
It's a part.
incidents, you're marking the major incidents that have you have experienced in a student's life or in the employee's experience on the job. Similarly, you have
Yeah.
to mention the same in the appraisal form as well. You're correct,
No,
ma'am.
no, that actually, yeah, because there was a connection error, and that's why I missed it. That's I was clearing this out.
No issues, ma'am.
So
It's
anecdotal.
another name for the same, because anecdotal records is something that we actually write, maintain in schools and colleges majorly. Critical incidents is basically where the name changes. Specifically, it is more associated to the corporate world, or when we're talking about the performance appraisals of the employees.
Right, right. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions before I proceed further? Any other questions specifically about the tools so far? Because the next section that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to purely focus on the assessment tools that can actually help in career or personality assessment, basically. Because more and more organizations put their employees through these assessment tools, not only to know about their personality, or the basic specifically personality traits these employees come with, but these are also used for their academic development or for their career advancements in future. So that's the second part that I'm going to focus on. So if you have any questions.
Question, ma'am, rubrics can also be considered as rating scale?
Ma'am, it is helpful in rating scale. When I talked about bars, so bars again is based on a rubric only. You have to create a rubric only for the same. So you have to rate the behavior on the basis of the rubric that you have created. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, it is a combination of both, means rating scale and?
Rating scale and the behaviorally anchored rating scale, or as I say, rubric. What are you creating in a rubric? You are actually creating the rubric on the basis of the parameters that you are wanting to assess and the behaviors that you are seeing the person achieving on those parameters. For example, as I said, if I want a person to be assessed on interpersonal skills, for example, so when do I rate this person as 5 out of 5 on interpersonal skills? When he showcases 1, 2, 3, 4 behaviors. So that's basically where I am talking about creating a behaviorally anchored rating scale. And I have created a rubric for the same.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Are we clear with that, Dr. Agarwal?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay, so I'm proceeding with the second and the final aspect of this presentation. That's basically focusing on the career tools. Certain instruments purely to assess your careers, or when we are talking about helping you choose your right careers, it also helps you to choose the job that would be a good fit for you and the organization that will suit your personality and work style. See, when we are talking about the HR who comes to hire students, so the main purpose of the HR who is interviewing you, it's not only to assess you whether you are what kind of a salary you're going to negotiate with, but the role of the HR is also actually going to see whether you have the right attitude which can help you to fit in the organization culture. So when they're seeing your attitude, they're also trying to gauge your personality traits that you're showcasing. The questions that they ask you, they will actually say whether you have the development, whether you have the required leadership skills and the right attitude to work in that particular organization. And a few of the most popular career assessment tools, which not only help you in finding out your own strengths and your personality aspects, it will also help you on what are the various careers that people are going to be a good fit for even in future, because there are a lot of employees who actually change jobs or who actually give up the job that they have been working in for a very long time and they take a switch. So these particular tools are very effective and very helpful. These are tools which are culture fair. It can be used across different cultures. It sees to all the differences across cultures being covered up and checked, very well tested. something which is most profoundly used nowadays is a new test which has been developed by Gallup. It's known as the Clifton's Strength Finder. So when we are talking about Clifton's Strength Finder, it basically tells you, or it assesses you on 34 strengths. It actually categorizes you in different blocks, whether you are an energizer, whether you are somebody who's very good at the interpersonal skills. And under these different sections, they have segregated these 34 skills or 34 descriptors as they put it across. And their research, Gallup's research, actually proved that people who actively use their skills actually grow in their career much faster and are able to maintain a much higher quality of life. In fact, I'll just show you an example of how does a Gallup report look like. And this is something for which you to assess yourself on Clifton Strength Finder, you actually have to procure the books in which they have a code given actually. And through that particular code, this is something that you can do online. This is something that I had put my students through. That's why I know about this. So I'll just show you a report of what kind of a report it looks like. I'll just share an image with you. Just give me a second. Okay, I'll just share my screen with you. Okay, is this visible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, yes.
this is basically output of the Gallup Strength Finder or the Clifton Strength Finder, where basically they have these 4 categories: executing, influencing, strategic thinking, and relationship building. So these are the 4 strengths or the 4 sections or chunks of strengths that Clifton Strength Finder has segregated the 34 categories as, or 34 behaviors or 34 skills as. For example, in executing, when you are being assessed on a skill, if you are gaining very high scores on executing, it means you know how to make things happen. That's basically where we are talking about somebody who's a very good executioner. He or she can work tirelessly to implement a solution and has the ability to catch an idea and make it happen. Now, to show or to get high scores on achieving, these are the 34 strengths you need to score high on: achiever, arranger, belief, consistency, deliberative, discipline, focus, responsibility, and restorative. So this questionnaire or this tool, the Clifton Strength Finder, this tool has its questions around these skill sets when they are assessing these strengths in you. And if you're scoring high on this, that means you are good in executing. Similarly, if you're scoring high on this, means you are somebody who's able to influence very well. Relationship builder, you need to score very high on being adaptable, having high empathy. You're an includer, scoring high on positivity, individualization, etc. So in this way, it is actually able to tell you your performance on which are the strengths that you're really good at, or which chunk, whether you are an executioner, whether you are somebody who is a relationship builder, or whether you are somebody who is a strategic thinker. Now, when you are built on these 4 building blocks, so it also tells you what are the areas that you are not very strong on, and what are the things that you can do to develop those areas. It creates an entire report. It generates an entire report on the basis of which it actually provides a feedback. So basically it tells you the 5 most dominating strengths you have, along with the chunk or the out of these 4 building blocks. It will tell you which is it that you have got highest scores on, and which is it that you have the least score on, and something which is an area that you need to develop. So this is something which I have experienced is very beneficial on the basis of the feedback that my students have given me as well. So I see somebody's hand raised. If you have a question, please ask. Yes, Uma ma'am.
Yes, madam. I had a question regarding the use of this tool. So, is there a need to be trained to be administering this tool and evaluating the outcome of it, or is it like available free, or is it to be paid and bought? I wanted to know
Ma'am,
a
it's
few
not
details of
available
this.
free. It's not available for free.
Okay.
Gallup has a book. They have actually printed a book by the name of Strength Finder.
Okay.
So if you have that book, they have a code in that book through which you can assess this particular tool online. You have to do it on the spot kind of a thing, and they'll be able to generate a report, because you have to register yourself when you using that particular code. You have to register yourself. That means you have that book. So you have to register. You'll be sharing your email ID with them, and they'll be sending you that entire report to you online.
Okay, so but this is on an individual basis, or I can administer it to my class of students?
Ma'am, it's an individual students you have to administer it on. So each student has to buy one single book.
Oh, okay. Got it,
Are you
ma'am.
understanding?
Because yes. We have used Edgar Shane's career anchors to be able to help them understand what their career anchors are, and used it as a mode to select their specialization courses after their second semester.
It's very effective, ma'am. I have used Edgar Sheen's career anchors as well. But right now here, I'm just talking about those which are more prominently used. Even in fact, all of these can be used for some of them. In fact, I wouldn't say all of them can be used as advising people for pursuing their careers. But yes, Edgar Sheen's career anchors is an effective tool as well.
Right, madam. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions? Any other queries before I move ahead with the next tool? Okay, so moving on, I'll just take you back to my PPT. So the second instrument that I want to talk about is J.L. Holland's Ryizac model. So how many of you are familiar with J.L. Holland's person job fit theory? So basically, yes, Seema ma'am. Dr. Seema, you want to say something? Okay.
Oh, it's by mistake, something is happening in my computer and the mic is getting on. So there's an issue.
All right,
not a question.
Issues. Okay, so when we are talking about J.L. Holland's work, Holland basically gave this person job fit theory, where he says that people across the globe can actually be put into 6 different categories. 6 kinds of personalities that people can be put in. So he basically gave the acronym for the same as RIASEC, RIASEC. That's basically realistic, investigative, artistic, social, conventional, and realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. So he says globally, if you can put these people into 6 different categories, these 6 kinds of personalities need to have a similar kind of work environment. So simultaneously, he said that the work environment also needs to be in sync with the same, so that they can be happy and satisfied on the job. For example, I'll just share with you an image of the hexagon that this looks like. One second. Okay, I'll share the screen with you.
Madam, C stands for?
Okay, this is basically the 6 kinds of personalities according to Rysak or Holland's Rysak model, where if people are falling under realistic kind of environment, or sorry, realistic kind of personality, these people have mechanical abilities, they prefer to work with objects, machines, tools, plants, etc. So Professor Holland actually said that these people need to have an environment also which actually encourages them to do these things on a practical hands-on experience. These are the doers. If you put these people into persuaders kind of an environment, they will not be able to perform very well, or they will be not very happy on the job. So that's why they said that they need to have a similar kind of environment to be more satisfied and high performers on the job. So these are 6 kinds of personalities. Similarly, if we talk about people who are very social, these are people who are helpers. They want to inform people, enlighten them, teach them, train other people, develop them, help, and people who are very skilled with skilled with words. Somebody like us, very compassionate, and they seek to assist people or help people or look for the welfare of others. So these helpers, they need an environment where they can help people, where they can train and develop them and do everything for the welfare of others. If these helpers or these social environment, social people are actually put in an environment which is very high on organizing, or which is very conventional, which is very customary, which is very rule bound, very structured, the probability is that they will get suffocated after some time and they might not be able to perform very well on the job. So that's why they said that these 6 different kinds of personalities need to have a similar kind of work environment also to prosper on the job. The third tool again is an extension of Holland's theory. I'll just share the PPT again with you, which is basically known as Strong's inventory. Strong's invest inventory, it is basically, again, it has the foundation of Holland's code only, that is Rysak, where it tests one's work and job goals instead of their personality. It doesn't test the 6 Rysak personality codes as Holland has done, but on the basis of those 6 personality types, they are able to assess that these personality types, what are the job goals that they are interested in, or what are the fields that they can work well or prosper well in. For example, the activities that they do that they can enjoy doing, recreational activity that they should indulge in, or even for that matter, what kind of occupations and the tropical areas that they are going to be happy with. So that's an extension of Holland's Rysak's work itself. Moving on, these 2 are again very important tools purely meant for personality assessment. That's MBTI and Big 5. I'm sure you have
can I
heard.
ask?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Ma'am, these these scales can be used for assessing the career of students, you mean to say?
Ma'am, some of them are, see, first and foremost, this is basically for career advancements, and you can advise them. You can do career counseling also on the basis of the same, ma'am. So when you are assessing when you are applying any of these tools, whether we are talking about using Clifton Strength Finder, whether you are using Holland's test, it basically will assess the strengths of the student. On the basis of those strengths, you can actually advise them of what are the careers that they can pursue as well.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Similarly, when we are using MBTI basically tells you about the 16 permutation combination of the personality sets or the types that you are a part of. When we are talking about a personality type is a combination of traits. For example, when we talk about the first type that MBTI assesses is whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. So extroversion has a combination of traits. Extroversion is a type where people have certain traits. For example, people are very outgoing, people are very social, people are more participative, high on initiative takers, they are more people oriented. So these are some of the traits that comes under the type of extroverts. Similarly, introvert as a type or the personality type, it has people who are more reserved, who take time in opening up with people. So when we talk about these person MBTI type, it's again a very effective tool that more and more organizations are using people. But purely, this is technically MBTI type should not be used for hiring. MBTI should never be used for hiring, but this is something which can be used for developmental purposes. People have certain strengths, but there are some organizations who use MBTI for forming teams, the project teams that they are using, that they are doing. So they actually incorporate people with complementary skill sets on the basis of their MBTI types. So there again, it is a very effective tool. Similarly, Big Five model. Now, this is something that is again very effective. I'll just show it to you. I know I'm running short of time, but this is something that I actually wanted you to do. When we are talking about Big Five personality model, this is one of the very most frequently used tool, because it is said it is much more effective than any other tool, even more effective than MBTI, where people are said that if you have these 5 personality traits in you, you can be a very good or very effective manager for future. Now, when we are talking about MBTI, when we are talking about Big Five model, it assesses you on 5 most important dimensions of emotional stability, extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. And in fact, if you are high on these scores, it actually helps the management of any institution know how are you going to perform on your job, along with some of the behaviors of organizational citizenship behavior that you can showcase, and what kind of a job fitness will you show. I'll just share with you if
Ma'am, can I ask a question?
Sure, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I'm teaching OB since a long time, and
Yeah.
I have been teaching this MBTI and Big Five personality traits model.
Right.
The problem is that if you want to use this for assessing the students, MBTI, I think you have to take a training, formal training from the institute, and then you can use the scale and then do the evaluation, etc. So I just wanted to know from you, are there some places or some sources where we can use such scales for the students? I mean,
Ma'am, I'm
MBTI is
really
something
sorry.
for which I will require training from the
I'm
institute.
really sorry. I have actually never experienced something like that, because I'm a psychologist by profession. I'm a trained psychologist by profession, so I don't need to undergo any kind of trainings specifically to run MBTI professionally. But as far as what you're saying is very logical, because you need to be a trained psychologist, or otherwise you need to be trained to use these tools. But unfortunately, ma'am, you don't have anything online that you can run an MBTI, because these are actually very expensive tools, ma'am.
Yes. That is what I was, thinking of, asking you.
Right.
So
these are
how can
actually
I
very,
use these tools in the class? That is what I want to do.
ma'am, I would just simply suggest this, that just see if there are any online versions for the same. These will be Indianized versions, ma'am. This will not be official, because obviously when you're talking about MBTI, this is an Myers-Briggs organization, institutes, Myers-Briggs institution, which actually you need to take the license, or otherwise, if not the license, you need to buy the tool from them.
Yes. I actually have, gone through all this process, so I know that. So I was, thinking if there is some other way out.
Ma'am, you just have to explore the net and check for some Indian version of the same.
I actually got one Excel sheet, madam, In that it was online, so I don't know how much authenticated that thing is. So there is an Excel sheet in which the student can answer questions, and that Excel sheet provides the MBTI personality dimension of that student. So I use that in class, but I don't know how much authenticated it is.
Ma'am, have you taken a feedback from the student? Ma'am, I believe students are the best feedback providers.
Yes,
Did they find it beneficial?
Yes, they were quite satisfied, and it was giving the right judgment about their personality.
Fair enough. So, ma'am, it might be useful. Otherwise, honestly saying, until unless you are not, what should I say, you're not authenticated to use these tools, you'll have to undergo that training.
Yes.
Right?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. So,
ma'am,
yeah.
I'm just one question, Anuradha here. Ma'am, I've always wondered if somebody who knows, a bit of psychology and all these tests, can they, sort of, what you can say, give a false answer and try to get out a personality of the type which the organization will want? That is, can we manipulate these tests and the answers if we know what is happening? I always have this question when all these tests are done. So is it possible, ma'am?
Ma'am, honestly saying, like doctors, even psychologists actually they have a code of ethics actually. They are not supposed to do it. They are not supposed to give or predict false personality type just to accommodate somebody or just to please somebody. That's basically the ethical issue that will come into question here. But
no, ma'am, I'm not talking about the psychologist. If I'm doing the test and I know what is being tested for, like because I've done my MBA, I know what an organization wants. So can I manipulate my answers?
Of course, you can manipulate your answer, but the catch here is, ma'am, all these questionnaires have lie detection questions there as well.
Okay.
When you are talking about running your answers on these questionnaires, even if you're trying to fake it, somewhere or the other, these lie detection questions can actually catch you. So that's something either you need to be very smart about the same, otherwise somebody who is proficient in it, or somebody, if there is a psychologist sitting on the panel, or even for that matter an HR, many a times HR guys are also trained in this, so they can make out, they can see that, okay, fine, you are faking something else and you have written something else here. So they can make out.
Okay.
And this will be in case of DISC. You are talking about that we need to face some lie detective questionnaires.
Ma'am,
we can't manipulate.
Questionnaire itself has some questions or some statements which actually can catch if the student or the participant or the person who's answering that question is lying. There are certain answers that you give. So if there is a contradiction in those answers, it can very well be caught by the person who is assessing you.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Okay. So I guess I have overshot my time. So if you guys would just allow me, I'll just talk about this. So Big Five personality model is actually considered to be a very effective tool. And this is something that you will find many versions of the same online also. So I would definitely invite you and say that you should use it. And this is something which is going to be very beneficial for you as well as your students. And the last, again, a very effective tool which more and more corporates are also using for their employees, specifically when they are hiring them, goes by the name of DISC. This is basically developed on the work of Dr. William Marston, and he basically devised this tool purely to evaluate the behavioral patterns based on the preferences and priorities that the person gives. Now, when the person is used or he has to undergo this particular tool, specifically when the organization is using for hiring purposes, the purpose of the organization is to actually see what is the preference that this individual is doing, whether his behavior is steady or not, whether he is high on concitious or not, what are the dominant features that this person's personality has. So as the acronym of DISC goes, it basically assesses you on 4 dominant traits or 4 most important aspects. One is dominance, whether you are somebody who's very high on dominance or whether you are somebody who is moldable, who's somebody who is assertive yet not dominant enough to not listen to others also. Second is how strong an influencer you are. Do you have the capability to influence or be influenced? Third characteristic that this assesses you on is steadiness. Now, steadiness is not only in the task that you show, but here it is also about the emotional steadiness that you show. Or another word for it is the emotional stability. And the fourth aspect that it assesses you is being high on concitiousness. So concitiousness is considered to be one trait which most organizations, and in fact, I should say all organizations, prefer having in their employees. So with this, I'll end my presentation. So these are some of the most effective tools. I have used most of them and I found them very effective. In fact, I would say my students find it very effective. So in case you have any questions about the same, anything at all, please ask, because my
can you
purpose.
please share your email address with us so that we can.
Sure, ma'am. I'll definitely share it with you. In fact, Professor Mohanty, when he introduced me, he actually shared that I can be contacted, but I am just typing my email ID here in the chat box.
Thank you
so
so
you
much.
can just contact me anytime you want. All right. I'll just sum it up. I've tried to segregate my presentation in 2 parts. One was purely on the assessment tools and instruments that we use in our class, and how is it most effectively used, or where can we use it more better. And second part was purely the tools and the instrument that we can use to advise our students also in their career advancement. It helps them to assess their personality skills. They know more about themselves, and students enjoy knowing about themselves. Sometimes it is a very different revelation for them. And how can we advise them for their career growth in future also, or for the placements that they're being hired here. So any other questions anybody has, or can we just close the session, please?
Okay.
Professor Mohanty, over to you.
Yeah. So I can't thank you enough, Dr. Khan. I can't thank you enough for all your efforts. Okay, a graveyard session, you made it so lively. Okay, post-noon sessions are always known as graveyard sessions. You added a lot of value to it. Okay, and I'm sure and more than sure that all the participants might have learned a new tool, a new technique to utilize in the classroom. Okay, and make their engagement with students more fruitful. Okay, so thank you, Adam, and thank you, participants, for a very patient hearing, a very participative crowd we had today. All through the last 3 days, we are having a very participative audience. Okay, so thank you for all your participation.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Wish you all the best. Okay, nice evening and a great night ahead. Okay, so catch you again tomorrow in the morning. Till then.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All the best, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now you can log out. We catch up again tomorrow in the morning. In case if you have some questions, you can post them to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.